Does it make sense to pursue an area of medicine I don't want to practice in just so I can FIRE faster? For instance, pursuing internal medicine or family medicine instead of a surgical subspecialty just to cut time out of residency. Wow. I'm kind of sad to even hear the question. First of all, FIRE is financial independence, retire early. Basically, punching out of medicine and going and doing something else. I'm all for being financially independent. But I find it kind of sad when you're not even in your career yet and you're already planning to retire early from it. Medicine is not a great option for FIRE in the first place, right? You don't even get out of training until you're early to mid 30s. And at that point, you're probably $300,000 or $400,000 underwater due to your student loans. And so by the time you get those paid off and really start building wealth, traditional FIRE at 30 or 35 or 40, like all these FIRE blogs talk about, is not possible in that situation. And so if that's really your goal, I'd advise against medicine in the first place. And it's probably not the best thing to do from a FIRE perspective. But the question is not that. The question is, should I choose a different specialty in order to FIRE faster? Well, the problem with choosing a specialty with a 3-year residency, like internal medicine or pediatrics or family medicine, is that the pay is also lower. So yes, you get out of residency sooner and you can start building wealth, but you also get paid less for that entire career. So it's probably sixes, whether you get out earlier or whether you stay in training longer and make more money. Now, I suppose if your goal is really to FIRE early, you got to be a little bit careful about those specialties that have long training periods and don't pay more. And you guys know who you are out there. It tends to be things like internal medicine and pediatric subspecialties, infectious disease, nephrology, those sorts of things where you train for longer, but you don't really get paid for that additional training. Basically, all the subspecialties of emergency medicine, toxicology, EMS, wilderness medicine, none of them actually increase how much money you make. And so if your goal is really just to get out as fast as possible, I would avoid those sorts of specialties. But I wouldn't necessarily pick internal medicine over general surgery. I think you're going to make up for the additional training with the higher income. Personally, I think emergency medicine might be one of the best if you're really interested in firing early for a couple of reasons. You get a 3-year training period. You also have a pretty high hourly rate, and it's relatively easy to work a lot. If you want to work a whole bunch early on and save up a whole bunch of money early on, that's relatively easy to do in emergency medicine. Now, it probably leads to burnout, but if you're retiring at 40 anyway, I guess that's not as big of a deal to not have that career longevity that I encourage you to have. But frankly, I think if you're really already feeling that at the time when you're choosing a specialty, meaning when you're a second or third or fourth year medical student, there's probably an issue with the career you chose. And maybe you ought to be thinking about getting out of medicine into a career you'll be happier in long term. I like the saying, I think it was Seth Godin that said, is pick something you love to do and you'll never have to, or rather he said, instead of planning your next vacation, why not plan a life that you don't need to take a vacation from? And it's like the classic saying of, find something you love to do and you never work a day in your life. And so I'd encourage you to try to do that when you're choosing your career. I understand some people get halfway through a career and they're just kind of sick of it and start working toward FIRE or something like that. But from the beginning, why don't you go find something you really love to do? If you want your questions answered by the White Coat Investor, record your question at whitecoatinvestor.com/YQA or click the link in the description.